Javikir Sindarov is running away with this tournament. Heading into round 7, he sits on 5.5 points, a full point and a half clear of Fabiano Caruana in second place. Behind them, Pragnanda and Onishgiri are tied at 3, while Hikaru Nakamura, Wei and Andrey Esipenko are all fighting to stay relevant at 2 points. Every game from here matters enormously for the chasing pack. Today, we cover the one decisive game of the round. Andrey Esipenko, the young Russian tactician known for his sharp, aggressive play, badly needed a win to stay in contention. Facing him is Wei, the Chinese prodigy celebrated for his deep calculation and fearless attacking style. Both players entered this game on just 2 points, meaning a loss would be close to tournament ending for either of them. The Petrov defense, or Russian game, is one of Black's most solid replies to e4. Rather than defending the e5 pawn, Black immediately counters with knight to f6, mirroring White's development. It has been the choice of players like Vladimir Kramnik and Magnus Carlsen when they want to avoid early complications. The modern attack with d4 gives White an ambitious central thrust, aiming for a dynamic struggle rather than positional grinding. White stakes a claim in the center immediately, the most classical of all opening moves and the starting point for some of the sharpest chess ever played. Black meets in kind, and we have the symmetrical king's pawn opening. Both sides declare their intentions for a central fight from the very first move. Knight to f3 attacks the e5 pawn and develops a piece toward the center. White invites Black to choose between defending the pawn or countering actively, and here it is. The Petrov defense. Rather than defending e5 with the bishop or a pawn, Black hits back at White's e4 pawn, signaling a solid and symmetrical middle game. White plays the modern attack, thrusting d4 immediately to challenge Black's e5 pawn. This is the most ambitious try, aiming for a full center and early activity. Black captures on e4, the principled response. White's center is now under immediate pressure, and Black dares White to prove the piece sacrifice is justified. White plays queen to e2, the signature move of this variation. The idea is to attack the knight on e4 and recapture on e5 with tempo if Black does not react carefully. This line has been championed by players looking to avoid heavy theory. After the more common bd3 systems, Black plays d5, the standard response, closing the center and supporting the knight on e4. This gives Black a solid pawn structure and prepares to develop the remaining pieces. White captures on e5, regaining material and placing the knight on a powerful central square. The position is very sharp with knights on e4 and e5 facing each other. Bishop to e7, preparing to castle and connecting the rooks. Black develops sensibly, keeping the position solid before launching any counterplay. White pushes f3, attacking the knight on e4 and trying to establish a broad pawn center. This is an aggressive approach that weakens the e3 square slightly. The knight retreats to d6, challenging the white knight on e5. Notice how Black's knight will help force the white knight off its dominant post. Knight to c3 develops a piece and supports the e5 knight while preparing more central control. White keeps the tension in the position. Knight to f5, a very active square. Black's knight leaps forward, creating the threat of nxd4 and pressuring White's queen on e2. The queen steps back to f2, keeping an eye on the f5 knight and maintaining coordination. White is carefully maneuvering to keep all the pieces safe. Black castles kingside. Getting the king to safety. With the center still contested, this is precisely the right moment to tuck the king away. White develops the bishop to f4, putting it on an active diagonal and eyeing potential targets. The position is becoming rich with plans for both sides. Black plays f6, kicking the knight on e5 away. This pawn advance opens lines toward White's position and gains space on the kingside. The knight retreats to d3, a solid regrouping square. White keeps the piece active while avoiding being pushed around further. Knight to c6 develops the last minor piece and increases pressure in the center. Black's pieces are coordinating well, aiming at the d4 pawn. Knight to e2, repositioning toward the kingside and preparing to reroute. White is regrouping the pieces to find better squares. Knight to b4, a bold incursion. Black threatens nc2 plus winning the rook, forcing White to react immediately to this tactic. White captures the knight on b4, eliminating the threat. There is no choice here, as allowing nc2 would be catastrophic. Bishop takes b4 with check, a nice recapture that gains tempo. Black wins back the piece and forces the white king to move or the c3 pawn to block. White blocks with c3, pushing the bishop back. The c3 pawn now creates a small space disadvantage but keeps material balanced. The bishop retreats to d6, a fine square from which it eyes the kingside. Black's minor pieces remain active and well placed. White plays bishop to d2, and this is where the engine flags a significant error. The evaluation swings a full pawn in black's favor. White needed to find a more active approach here, as this passive bishop move allows black to seize the initiative. Black responds with queen to e8, and the engine marks this as a mistake, missing the chance to press even harder immediately. The queen heads toward the kingside, but the initiative black had earned is slightly softened by this choice. White moves the king to d1, trying to tuck it away from potential checks. With castling no longer an option, White seeks safety by walking the king toward the queen side. Queen to a4 with check. The engine marks this as a mistake as well, with the evaluation shifting slightly. Black is generating pressure but not finding the most precise continuation. The king steps to c1, escaping the check and hiding on the queen side. White is surviving for now, but the king is exposed and far from ideal safety. Black pushes b5. The engine flags this as another inaccuracy. The idea is to create queenside space and open lines, but the timing could have been better. Knight to f4, a fighting move. White centralizes the knight and threatens to create some activity of their own on the kingside. Black plays c5, and the engine again marks this as a significant imprecision with an evaluation swing of over 2 pawns. Black is pushing in the center, but White now gets some counterplay. The position is objectively still in Black's favor, but the advantage has been slightly squandered. White plays bishop to d3, a more active placement. The bishop now eyes the h7 pawn and creates threats against Black's kingside. Black captures on d4, opening the c-file. The engine notes this continues a series of slightly imprecise moves for Black, though the advantage remains firmly on Black's side. White retreats the bishop to c2, keeping it active on the long diagonal. This also clears d3 for potential rook play. Queen to a6, repositioning to a safer square away from potential tactics. Black's queen eyes the a-file and can swing to the kingside if needed. White recaptures on d4, restoring some pawn structure. The center is now more defined, and White hopes the open files will help the rooks. Bishop to d7, developing the last piece and preparing to double rooks on the c-file. Black's pieces are all coming to life now. The king steps to b1, hoping to find a slightly safer corner on the queen side. White is trying to consolidate, but the king remains vulnerable. Rook to c8, Black doubles rooks on the c-file. White's position is under serious pressure, and the evaluation confirms Black is well on top. White repositions the bishop to d3, again trying to challenge Black's active rooks, but the position is becoming increasingly difficult to hold. Rook to c4, a powerful penetration. Black's rook lands on the 4th rank, attacking the d4 pawn and creating concrete threats along the entire 4th rank. Knight retreats to e2, trying to reorganize. White is scrambling to find a way to hold the crumbling position together. Knight to e7, rerouting with purpose. Black's knight will look for a better square, while the rook on c4 continues to dominate. White pushes g4, and the engine shows this as a further concession of nearly 2/3 of a pawn. White is trying to create some kingside counterplay, but this weakens the pawn structure significantly. The second rook joins on c8. Both rooks are now bearing down on the c-file, and the pressure on White's position is becoming overwhelming. White advances h4, continuing the kingside expansion. The engine shows this as another inaccuracy, giving Black an even larger edge. White is playing for activity, but the queenside defense is collapsing. Black plays b4, and this is the key breakthrough. The engine swings over 4 pawns in Black's favor. Black's queenside pawns are storming forward, and with the c-file dominated by both rooks, White's position is on the verge of complete collapse. White tries b3, attempting to blockade the b4 pawn and keep the queenside closed for a moment longer, but the material situation is already dire. Bishop to b5, a crushing move. The engine swings over 5 pawns in Black's favor. The bishop pins down White's pieces while the rooks on c4 are ready to deliver the knockout. White's position is objectively lost. White captures on c4, trying to simplify and create some confusion, but the resulting position only worsens White's situation as Black's pieces remain dominant. Bishop takes c4, and the engine now shows a massive swing of 10 pawns. Black's bishop lands powerfully on c4, controlling key squares and threatening to completely dismantle White's position. White is now completely lost. White retreats the bishop to c2, a desperate attempt to block the c-file and stabilize, but the material and positional disadvantage is now insurmountable. Bishop to d3, and the eval grows to over 6.5 pawns in Black's favor. Black's bishop is a monster on d3, cutting off White's pieces and threatening to penetrate decisively. White has no good defense. White plays bishop to c3, and this blunder walks into a forced checkmate sequence. The engine swings over 90 pawns in one move. White was already lost, but this move removes the last defensive resource, and the game enters a forced mating net. Black takes on c3, ripping open the position around the White king. The mating net is now absolutely forced, and there is nothing White can do. White plays knight to c1, a last desperate attempt to block any invasion, but the engine confirms checkmate is forced regardless. Rook to b8 with check, the final blow. Black delivers a back-rank check that completes the mating attack. White is completely helpless, and Esipenko resigned. Wei E converts a complex technical advantage into a devastating finish. What decided this game was a gradual accumulation of pressure by Wei E, culminating in the b4 pawn break that cracked White's queenside wide open. Esipenko's king never found safety, after declining to castle early, and once both black rooks landed on the c-file, the position became untenable. The bishop on d3 and the final rook check sealed a well-earned victory. And that wraps up round 7 of the FIDE Candidates 2026 Open. Sindarov continues to lead the pack, but with every round the pressure on the chasing players grows. Wei E picks up a vital win to stay in the hunt. The games ahead promise even more fireworks as the field tightens. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and do not forget to subscribe for every round review.